Hello Internet, this is the Anarcho-Tech, and this is the first video in a long series of videos I am doing on traditional anarchist theory. I've broken down all of these videos into various clusters, and each cluster addresses a different topic in anarchism. The first cluster is the question, what is anarchism, etymologically and in theory. In this specific video, we're going to be addressing the question, what is anarchism, and hopefully answering it in a brief way. It's not the final answer to the question, it's more of a tentative proposal for discussion, and hopefully discussion will ensue. So let's begin. What is anarchism? That's the question. Let's see what we can do. My tentative answer to the question is that anarchism is the desire to eradicate all forms of domination, as well as the desire to not dominate others personally. Hopefully this is easy to understand. The complication, of course, is that many political theories claim to offer liberation from domination. So the question is, what separates anarchism from other political theories? And that's something we'll get to, but for right now it's just important to understand that anarchism is fundamentally opposition to domination, and in the next video we'll look at the definition and show how that's true etymologically. Anarchism is a negative political theory. Anarchists seek the abolition of all hierarchy and illegitimate authority, as these are the structure and source of domination. And this opposition to hierarchy and illegitimate authority includes abolishing not only all government, with its routine use of violence, and corporations, which is institutionalized responsibility, and other institutions, but also abolishing the ways hierarchical authority has woven its way into the fabric of our everyday life. That's an important concept to get. Power is not somewhere out there directing its energy towards us, oppressing us. There are many ways in which we ourselves are creating this hierarchy and creating this authority which is illegitimate within ourselves. And a lot of anarchists focus on that. So it's not a dichotomy between power and the state and then us. We tend to replicate and reproduce much of the state ourselves. And a lot of classical anarchist theory is well aware of this problem. Thus, anarchism is opposed to sexism, racism, homophobia, patriarchy, speciesism. Speciesism is the belief that your species is better than another species, that humans are better than dogs. Nationalism, etc., etc. Anarchists also work to expose ideology and the ways in which our economics, philosophy, politics, and religion all work to rationalize the world as it is, i.e. naturalizing domination and abuse. Thus, critical institutional analysis and conceptual thinking is pretty important to. But the point is that the capacity to see beyond superficial oppression and to instead see the systemic root of that oppression is key to anarchism. A police officer beats you. You're not opposed necessarily to just that officer. You're opposed to the forces which have led that officer to beating you. That's a systemic awareness. It's an institutional awareness. That police officer is embedded within a system that pushes him towards beating you. That's pretty simple to understand, and that's pretty important to anarchist theory. Looking beyond just what happens and looking into the cause of what happens on a very broad basis. Anarchism is the desire to eradicate domination. That's something I want to say again and again. That's what anarchism is, and in the next video I'll explain that etymologically. Yet, where does domination end and where does it begin? Is it possible to escape coercion, power, and hierarchy? This is a question posed to anarchists not only by other people, but by anarchism itself. And much of the division within anarchist circles is born out of this question: where does domination end? Where does it end, and where does it begin? Is the state the only dominating force, or is sexism a dominating force, or does it go so far as to say that symbolic thinking, according to Anarcho-Primitivist, symbolic thinking is a form of domestication and domination? And that's very difficult to believe the first time you hear it, but the more you look into it, the more sense it starts making. So that is an important question within anarchism, because anarchism is not a fixed philosophy. It's an open-ended philosophy, and there are a lot of problems within anarchism, just as there are within any other political theory. And that's important to recognize, especially for anarchists who tend to believe that somehow they have the perfect theory. There is no perfect theory. There's just the least stupid theory, and anarchism is the least stupid political philosophy out there. I'd said earlier that anarchism is a negative political theory, and I hope that you can juxtapose that to this, that anarchism is a positive social theory. this is what most people don't know about anarchism. They know that it wants to destroy the state and hierarchy, but they don't know that within that destruction there is the desire to construct a different kind of society that allows people to live more meaningful lives. Most anarchists believe in the potential of human beings to live together on equal terms, to create meaning and wonder for themselves, and to work together within a social framework. Anarchists are working towards constructing face-to-face, decentralized, federated communities wherein people have control over their own life and wherein interactions are based on a voluntary association and are not dominated by illegitimate authority. This will take time to explain more fully and to give examples of how this might work, but let me just say that for now. Anarchism is democracy carried to its logical and reasonable conclusion. That is probably the best definition of anarchism that I've ever heard. Illegitimate hierarchical authoritarianism, that's a big word. That's the enemy of anarchism, by definition. Illegitimate hierarchical authoritarianism, i.e., source of coercion and domination. This stems from the false belief that human beings, for whatever reason, need someone else to tell them how to live, and that the world must be controlled and subjected to our will, i.e., that people were born to be controlled and that the world is our oyster to exhaust. Those two premises are the source of our current state structure. And because they're false, we need to really consider the nature of the state and whether or not it has a legitimate existence. It's not justified if those beliefs are false. That's logic. That's truth. And to ignore that is to be irrational, is to be ignorant. And that's something that should be taken into consideration by any authentically rational person. Anarchism is the belief that we don't need another theorist, philosopher, or social engineer to tell us how to run the world. Every day in the media you hear people talking about the best way to run the economy, the best way to run the Middle East, and that's a form of ideology because it's based on the presupposition that it's desirable to run the world, or that it's desirable to run any group of people. What most anarchists want is a world that doesn't need running. Believe it or not, the world ran itself fine prior to human existence, and even during most of human existence. In fact, 99% of human existence was prior to domestication and agriculture about 10,000 years ago. And the world is much older than 10,000 years, so there was quite a bit of time in which the world was functioning fine. Anarchists believe the world and its people are capable of running themselves from the bottom up. This is a famous statement made by Chomsky that anarchists believe in running things from the bottom up, in which people make the decisions and things flow from that rather than the other way around, where one group of people make a decision and the rest of the people have to follow. That's a great distinction to make between anarchism and other political theories. In summa, anarchism is the expression of the desire to be free of archos, anarchy, archi, okos. It's Greek. It means ruler or authority, not necessarily government. That's a key distinction we'll get at in the next video. Archos is illegitimate authority and or hierarchy. It is democracy carried to its logical and feasible conclusion. Archos is found not just in the state or government or church, but can exist in our everyday life, our relationships, thoughts, and actions. We often enslave ourselves. That's an important aspect of anarchism, of self-liberation, of not merely from the state, but sort of liberating yourself from yourself. Anarchism can be perceived merely as a negative political theory only insofar as one fails to see its positive social desires, the construction of a meaningful life free of unnecessary domination. That's kind of political dual aspect theory. Dual aspect theory in philosophy means an entity which can be perceived two different and equally rational ways. It's not a violation of the law of identity for all the philosophers out there that are listening to it, because politically, within a synthetic context, things can have that aspect. Sorry if that's probably an arbitrary point. Anarchism is an affirmation of the human capacity to reason, feel, and live meaningfully. And this is something that is universal, I believe. Human beings have the desire to live free of domination. And anarchism, as a political theory, supports that desire in a way that is coherent and logical and feasible, unlike many utopian theories. So, that's anarchism in brief. From here, I will go on to explain it in much more detail, much more systematically as well, and much more exploratory and experimentally. Please add comments. This is the second version of this video, and I will make another one if comments require it, if it's worth making another one. I hope anarchists comment especially and tell me what they think. Thanks.